On the dark night of August 8th, 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. Inside one of its carriages were bags filled with banknotes worth approximately £67 million today, or nearly 800 crore. The train's driver, Jack Mills, was speeding through the darkness when suddenly, at a railway crossing, a red signal light flashed on. This was highly unusual, because at that time and location, a red signal made no sense, especially for a Royal Mail train. Still, Jack Mills immediately applied the brakes and brought the train to a halt on a deserted stretch of track. For a few moments, an eerie silence took over. But hidden behind that silence was a master plan, one that would lead to the greatest train robbery of the century. The Great Train Robbery, a crime where the train itself was stolen. Ladies and gentlemen, this story may sound like something straight out of a movie. But in real life, criminals carried out a suspense-filled operation and looted millions of pounds from a British government train without firing a single bullet. Everything began months earlier, when a group of well-known London criminals gathered to plan a new and daring crime. The mastermind was Bruce Reynolds, who, along with a few trusted partners, began designing a robbery unlike anything seen before. Bruce had access to classified information about Royal Mail, provided by a senior Royal Mail security officer whose identity has never been revealed. This insider informed him that the Glasgow to London train carried a special carriage known as the Hivalia Package H coach, which transported large amounts of cash. The plan was simple: rob that specific carriage. Although Bruce and his crew were experienced criminals, they had no experience robbing trains. So they brought in another gang from London, known as the South Coast Raiders, who specialized in train robberies. Slowly, the team grew to more than 15 members. Their goal was clear: rob a government train without gunfire. On August 7th, 1963, at 6:50 p.m. The train departed from Glasgow Central Station toward London, scheduled to arrive at Euston Station at 4 a.m. the next morning. The train had 12 carriages and 72 post office employees on board sorting mail during the journey. This train was designed to distribute mail without stopping. At various stations, mailbags were exchanged using elevated racks while the train slowed down but continued moving. The HVP carriage was not yet attached to the train. It was securely parked at Nuneaton railway station. Normally, an HVP carriage carried around £300,000, but because the previous week was a bank holiday, the amount on board that day was close to £3 million. An even more critical detail: the modern HVP carriages with alarm systems were out of service that day. As a result, an older reserve carriage M302 without any security alarms was used instead. This information, supplied by the insider, was priceless. Once attached at Nuneaton, the HVP carriage was placed second behind the engine, exactly as the robbers had been told. At around 3 a.m. on August 8th, one gang member tampered with the signal at Sears Crossing. He blocked the green light with a glove and powered the red light using a battery. Then the gang hid and waited. When the train arrived, Jack Mills was shocked to see the red signal and stopped the train immediately. The assistant driver, known as the second man, got off the train to use the trackside telephone to contact but the phone line had been cut. Another part of the plan. As he turned back, the robbers emerged from the bushes and overpowered him. Several robbers climbed onto the engine from both sides and tried to seize control. When Jack Mills resisted, one of them struck him on the head with an iron bar, knocking him unconscious at the controls. Meanwhile, other gang members uncoupled the first two carriages from the rest of the train. Their plan was to move the engine and those carriages away from the scene. About 1 kilometer away, at Bredigo Bridge, a truck was waiting. The robbers had brought along a retired train driver, but when he saw the modern controls, he panicked. He had never operated such an engine before. Left with no choice, the gang revived the injured Jack Mills and forced him to drive the train to Bredigo Bridge. At the bridge, the robbers broke into the HVP carriage. Inside were 5 postal workers who were beaten, tied up, and forced to lie face down as the robbery began. The carriage contained 128 mail bags filled with cash, mostly £1 notes, £5 notes, and 10-shilling bills weighing nearly 2.5 tons. Toto. The train stood above the bridge while a truck waited below. The gang had only 15 minutes, so they formed a human chain, loading 120 of the 128 bags into the truck. 8 bags were left behind due to time constraints. Before leaving, one robber warned the TIDAB staff not to move for 30 minutes, or they would be killed. The gang escaped using an Austin Lodestar truck and 2 Land Rovers, all carrying the same fake license plate BMEJ 757 to confuse witnesses. After a 45-minute drive, at around 4:30 a.m., they reached their hideout, a farmhouse near Oakley, about 43 kilometers away. Along the way, they listened to police communications via VHF radio, staying one step ahead. At the hideout, they celebrated wildly, even playing Monopoly with real money, but that celebration became their biggest mistake. Police soon announced a 50-kilometer search radius based on statements from the postal workers. Panic set in. The gang advanced their escape plan and divided the money the very next day. The stolen amount was about £2.5 million. Each main member received roughly £150,000, an enormous fortune at the time. They wiped fingerprints from the hideout and paid one man to burn the farmhouse down after they left. He took the money but never burned it. Meanwhile, police launched one of the largest manhunts in British history. Helicopters circled the area, patrol cars flooded the roads, and a £10,000 reward was announced. A neighbor reported unusual activity at the farmhouse on the morning of August 8th. Police raided the location and discovered mail bags, postal items, a hastily repainted truck, and most importantly, the Monopoly board with fingerprints. Those fingerprints proved decisive because nearly all gang members had prior criminal records. The prints matched Scotland Yard's data. Within days, 14 of the 16 robbers were arrested. Only 2 men were never caught: the replacement train driver, whose identity remains unknown, and the Royal Mail security officer who leaked the information. The court declared the crime the greatest robbery of the century, sentencing most gang members to 30 years in prison. After the robbery, Bridego Bridge became popularly known as Train Robbers Bridge. Train driver Jack Mills, age 58, never returned to work due to his injuries and died 7 years later, traumatized by the incident. Don't forget to like, share, and comment.